Hello, everyone, and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. This is episode number 75 of this illustrious radio show, and I am the Tony Makai, master of minds and men, your host today and every other day, frankly. Last month we did Harry Dean Stanton month, and I got to go through some very fun movies to some very heartbreaking ones. Doing another month this month is going to be a little bit more out there. As the entirety of May, I'm going to be looking at the films of German director Werner Herzog, starting off with the big one in Fitzcarraldo. So let's go ahead and get to it. But before we begin, like, subscribe. I don't care if you like. Honestly, just subscribe. I'm trying to grow and I need you, so do the right thing. Fitzcarraldo, directed by Werner Herzog, who also wrote it. Interesting man, a wholly unique director in a lot of ways, and that's very much made him a hit or miss sort of person, for me at least. He's an incredible talent, is often marred by the scope of what he wants to tell, and of course the frequent conflicts on his films, on the sets. But I'm excited to talk about those, and I'm excited to talk about him, to see if I can wrap my head around the enigma of Shribbly Pibbles himself. Starring Klaus Kinski. I just talked about his daughter, Natasha, last week, as she was in Paris, Texas. Beyond that, a mentally ill, rather horrible human being. His relationship with Werner is the epitome of frenemy. These two frequently and with great vigor going at each other, attacking each other a number of times, guns being involved, a number of death threats by various people on the set against Klaus, not just this film, but many others. And Claudia Cardinal, a striking, charming woman with a lot of talent. I know her from 8½, The Pink Panther, Escape to Athena, and lots more. I don't have much to say beyond. She always brings a spirit and demure attitude to every role. Release date for this movie was March 5th, 1982, and what came out the same week? The Last Shark. Have you seen Jaws? Do you wish it had more Italians? This is the movie for you. It's a ripoff of Jaws, but Italian. Probably can pass this one up. I mean, who likes Italians? And I'm dancing as fast as I can. A tepid biography about Barbara Gordon, no, not Batgirl, a woman who really likes Valium. Interesting enough, now Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern are in this, but they are not the Wet Bandits. Was this their first collaboration? Is this a prequel to Home Alone? You go ahead and tell me, folks. Moving to the plot, we come upon an Irishman named Brian living in Peru, in Iquitos, I believe is how it's said. He's a man of big ambition, but quite a mediocre businessman. He loves music and wishes to build an opera house in Iquitos. Seeing the rubber industry is booming, far beyond anyone's mild imagination, he decides to try his hand at it, despite warnings to, not do that. He manages to get a rather difficult lease for some rubber trees, and his madam girlfriend buys an old steamship with a motley crew of mostly natives. And to the surprise of no one, this goes poorly. The crew mostly abandons him, but thankfully a local tribe has taken a liking to Brian, and they help him pull the steamship over a small fucking mountain to get to the other side of the river. But the tribal chief has some second thoughts about messing with the gods and cuts the boat free. Everyone on the boat survives some poor conditions, but this ends Brian's dreams of rubber, and he's destined to go back to Iquitos without succeeding. But in an effort to live some of his dream, he picks up the opera crew that he had seen at the beginning of the film, and on the boat they sing for the poor people of Iquitos, so more people come to the shore to enjoy the music. I'm going to go over the pros and cons of this movie, as it was a really mixed bag here. Pros: Werner shows his worth and style as a director in this. He has a particular way of handling a movie, and the quality of directing and cinematography reflect that in what is mostly a positive way. He mixes in these really wonderful shots and some experimental shots with this frantic, kinetic directing of the actors, which I'll talk about the actors and the acting a little bit later. But Werner understands where people and things should really be, and it shows here, guided by a reasonably firm hand. The shots of the boat, especially going up the mountain, and the violence and wonder of it are considered classic in some realms of fandom, and I'd be hard-pressed to disagree with that. The sets, or lack thereof. Werner doesn't like sets, not in the traditional way. Obviously, there are some sets in that these aren't really these fictional characters' homes or whatever, but they are real places, real buildings. The boat is real, and really had to be carried over a hill by a group of people. And obviously, I'll get to the treatment of those people shortly, but everything is practical. It's real people interacting in real places with real things, and it had an air about it that is believable in a way that a lot of more overproduced work doesn't. I love practical sets and effects, even if they come off a little rough around the edges, because real life is rough and not so cookie cutter. It's 2.5 hours long with some change, and while I have some issues with the actual content, it was actually quite breezy of a film to watch. It did not feel like a slog. I was never bored. Frustrated, yeah, but not at all bored with anything really going on. Lots of frantic energy kept this one afloat. The characters, not the acting, but the characters are all really well defined, if not a little bit over the top. You get an understanding not just through dialogue, but actions and exaggerations, almost vaudeville mannerisms of who everybody is. It would be easy to watch this movie on mute with no subtitles and still understand who everyone is and what they were doing. I don't want to go over any particular characters as I'm going to address the acting and will do it then. But yeah, lots of clearly understood characters. I want to point out a weird little guy that works for Brian as a former venture of his, a railroad operator. And he was such a strange, flailing, odd, high-pitched guy. I enjoyed and was annoyed by him simultaneously. This really is a tale of two films, as the first 45-50 minutes is exceptional. The contrast of Brian's life with the life he wants to lead, the ambition he has, which is a Werner staple in a lot of films, with his actual talent and ability is interesting. We see these rich people who flaunt their wealth, and they care little for everything, care little for how their exploitation is hurting a region of the world. And this man sees himself as a failure, and others see him as that as well. But he refuses to hang his hat on that designation. It's compound with the use of music throughout. The rich don't appreciate the opera. They have no concept of the subtlety of the sounds. That being said, let's go through the cons. Second half of the movie is tons and tons of a boat moving slowly through the water. It's not necessarily boring. I was never bored watching this, like I said. It just wasn't interesting. Once we get to the boat, nothing really happens. There's minimal conflict, that of the crew leaving, which doesn't seem to be that big of an issue, because they meet the tribe, who almost instantly help out. And then they don't, and it ends. It's frustrating, and I think Nelson Muntz said it best about this movie, is that this movie is flawed, and I think the flaws really come out in the second part. It takes the conflict we had been presented, the rich versus poor kind of thing, and throws it into a kind of meandering travel story. It really sparks me that the boat parts remind me of Apocalypse Now. This is the part where they're having dinner with some industrialist kind of people. Reminds me of the scene where they have lunch with Harrison Ford and the other army people. That's neither here nor there, just something I wanted to point out. So have you ever learned about something new and just been so excited to tell someone about it that you couldn't wait to info dump at them? This is what the rubber parts feels like. We get a lot of stuff about rubber, how rubber tree industry works. It feels like Werner did some research and found it more interesting than he thought it would be. It's not a horrible thing. It was just hard not to notice. It's hard to discuss this without talking about the treatment of natives, not only in the film but in real life. Now, the treatment of natives in the film makes sense. We are kind of presented with imperialism unfettered. They are reduced and generally treated quite poor, which is fine. That's part of the film. It's not upsetting, and nothing feels outrageously abusive. But there's absolutely an air of inequality in all the dealings that shows the system they were dealing with at the time. The treatment of natives in the real life is a little more crappy, as that inequality and disregard did not stop when the camera stopped rolling, with native tribes being slandered and getting quite upset by things Werner did. I have found some conflicting reports on the level of upset and about what. But needless to say, kind of crappy to treat these people whose land you are on so poorly. And this includes at least one death and a chainsawed-off leg due to a snake bite. Yes, a chainsawed-off leg. The acting is generally very poor. Outside of Klaus, who first off looks like he is suffering from jaundice and is inexplicably playing an Irishman with a thick German accent, but he gives the best performance of the lot, and that's by a large margin. Everyone else ranges from silly to flat out not an actor, since they hired groups of natives. While I praise the characters being eccentric, the acting borders on parody. It really doesn't detriment the film that much, as this is very much Klaus and the Boat's film. I kept the subtitles on the whole time, but alternated between the American dub and the German language parts, and it was very strange. The dub and subtitles don't match a lot more frequently than I would have liked, which I just hate. The American voices were strange, especially Miguel Angel Fuentes of Puma Man fame, which is a great Mystery Science Theater episode, who has a notoriously deep voice, is given this strange, light accent. Sound in general was kind of messy. That was just the worst part, and it was a clear dub actors were reused from multiple parts, which is common but annoying. Soundtrack was fantastic. In fact, this is the highlight of the film for me. The use of sound by Brian, the use of music, his love of it, his wanting to give it to the people where he lives, poor and rich alike, the conflict with the aristocracies, and the fact that they don't appreciate opera, which is a great part, and the ending scene with the opera players from the beginning, singing for everybody, was a nice send-off. And from that, we got some wonderful operatic music by Giuseppe Verdi and Richard Strauss. Beyond that, the music was great throughout. It had an almost whimsical note to it on occasion that helped lift some of these themes, give it some levity. Just excellent soundtrack. Overall, I said it before, quoting Nelson Muntz, This movie's flawed, and it really is. It's a slightly frustrating film, but overall it was captivating. It was different. It was a unique experience in cinema, something I think I generally enjoyed in an overall way. It's a polarizing film. I've seen people call this a masterpiece, a triumph, and some say it's flat out awful and boring. I don't think either of those are true. I think it's definitely got some very high highlights and some very low lowlights. And it's something I probably wouldn't recommend to most people, but I think if you like paced, unique films, you would get something out of this. If you're a fan of cinema, I think you will enjoy it a lot more than the average movie goer, of course. So yeah, interesting film. Recommend to some. Well, that was week 1 of Werner Herzog month with Fitzcarraldo. Have you ever been on a boat? I myself can't swim, so I've never ventured onto one that actually left the dock. There's a little factoid about me. Let me know your feelings about boats down below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, go to my Patreon, let me know what you want me to review. Add me on Instagram under Demon Peaks for daily Twin Peaks memes. To my podcast, The Dark Peaks Podcast. Next week, we keep up with Mr. Herzog, so we look at My son, what have ye done? This has been the Tony Makai, Master of Minds and of Men. Thank you very much, and goodbye.